Welcome to Center Seat. Let's bring in our panel tonight. Syndicated columnist George Will, Mara Eliason, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer, and in the Center Seat tonight we welcome Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul. Senator, thanks for being here.
Glad to be with you.
A lot of people asking, what do you think happens with Obamacare and where this all ends up, the end game here, as we see all of the pieces of this moving forward?
You know, I don't think it's fixable. And I think that most of the fixes coming from the executive are unconstitutional. One of the clear separations of powers was that the legislature was supposed to legislate and the president wasn't. He's essentially amended Obamacare maybe 20 some odd times, and I don't think he's allowed to. And so I think it needs to be decided in court. But I think his fix, saying, oh, you can still sell these insurance policies, well, they've quit selling these insurance policies. They're not going to all of a sudden call you up and say, oh, yeah, we can give you the cheaper policy, when they know President Obama is actually forcing them into the more expensive policy within a year.
But do you think that the administration, the president, will somehow back down, realizing that the thing's not coming together, or do you think that it's going to take an effort some other way?
Well, you know, I had predicted 2 weeks ago that within a month he would do something. Within 2 weeks he did something because it was so horrendous. You know, they were repeating over and over again that he had promised you could keep your doctor, and apparently it isn't true. The other thing that hasn't been reported enough is that we actually had a vote in the Senate. This isn't part of the original Obamacare. It's a regulation passed 3 months later, and we voted to try to get rid of the rule to say you couldn't be canceled. Every Republican said we didn't like the rule and voted against it. Every Democrat, including some of those now running away from this rule, voted to keep this rule, specifically the rule allowing them to cancel your policy.
Mark.
Senator, what would you like to replace Obamacare with, or do you think that the system we had before the law was passed was just fine?
You know, I practiced medicine for 20 years, and I think the system we had wasn't real capitalism, didn't have great competition, and didn't work well. So really, if you want a good system, you need a system that has good competition. For example, I do cataract surgery. My charge was the same as every doctor in the whole country for cataract surgery because Medicare paid for most of it. If you were to double magically the number of ophthalmologists in one night, we'd spend twice as much and the price would be the same because prices don't go up and down. That's a true marketplace. But I think we went the wrong way. He narrowed the marketplace. The only marketplace in medicine were health savings accounts, and he made them smaller. I would make them almost infinite and let them use them for your college education if you didn't use them for your medicine and for your medical care.
So tax-free savings to pay for your medical care, and that would be the Republican plan?
Well, it helps. And what it does is when you have tax-free accounts, you buy policies with higher deductibles, and they're cheaper. Under Obamacare, you have higher deductibles, and they're not cheaper because they mandate that it covers 15 different items that you have to have. So a 24-year-old single guy has to have dental coverage for his kids that he doesn't have, and pregnancy coverage for the wife he doesn't have. And so under our system, you'd have higher deductibles but lower premiums, but you'd have more freedom as to how to spend your money.
Charles.
Well, Senator, when Obamacare was an issue a month ago, when it came to continuing resolution to funding the government, you supported the filibuster of other senators who demanded that you had to have a change or abolition of Obamacare as a condition for funding the government. In retrospect, you think that was a good strategy, but even more important, looking ahead, the deadlines are coming up, the continuing resolution is going to run out, we're going to hit the debt ceiling soon. Would you be prepared to use the same tactic as we approach the new deadlines?
Well, I said throughout the whole battle that shutting down the government was a dumb idea. Even though it did appear as if I was participating in it, I said it was a dumb idea. And the reason I voted for it, though, is that it's a conundrum. Here's the conundrum. We have a $17 trillion debt, and people at home tell me we can't give the president a blank check. We just can't keep raising the debt ceiling without conditions. So unconditionally raising the debt ceiling, nobody at home wants me to vote for that, and I can't vote for that. But the conundrum is if I don't, we do approach these deadlines. So there is an impasse. In 2011, though, we had this impasse, and the president did negotiate. We got the sequester. If we were to extend the sequester from discretionary spending to all the entitlements, we would actually fix our problem within a few years.
But what if the Democrats and the president resist any of that as we approach the expiration of the continuing resolution?
I think they will resist, and I think they know that our leverage is diminished and our will to shut down the government is diminished. Well, I will not vote to raise the debt ceiling without conditions, but that doesn't mean I'm in favor of, you know, sometimes you vote no and the government still stays open. So I'm in favor of voting for the principled position, but trying not to be the fly in the ointment that shuts the government down.
You mean as long as your side doesn't have a majority?
Well, that's the difficulty, because we have the majority in the House and we're a minority in the Senate. So that is the difficulty. When we got out of the impasse last time, it took mostly Democrats and some Republicans.
If it's a tie,
I predict that's what it will take again.
If it's a tie and you're the deciding vote, which one do you want?
If it's a tie in the deciding vote, I have to vote for what everybody in Kentucky wants, and that's that we cannot raise the debt ceiling unconditionally.
George.
You begin this evening by saying what the president is doing when he revises the language of the law, and this is the president without a line item veto even to change numbers, is unconstitutional. However, if he gets away with it and it becomes established practice, then it becomes constitutional by default, and the Supreme Court will not intervene to referee this dispute between the branches. What can be done?
Well, I think I'm not sure I know the answer to that, because I keep asking lawyers, and I ask friends in the Senate who are constitutional lawyers, how do we get standing to adjudicate this question? Most of them say it's very difficult, if not impossible. And so I don't know how you answer this. But to me, it's one of the fundamental tenets of our country is the separation of powers, that legislature, in fact, Montesquieu said that if you allow the executive to legislate, you're essentially allowing him to become tyrannical. So we have to do something about it. I think there should be an avenue through the Supreme Court, but so far I haven't discovered how we would do it.
The president has now defined success down. That is, a 20% failure rate is considered a success. But if that fix produces that result, 80% in, 20% out, the adverse selection it gets worse. That is, premiums will go up in the next year.
Right.
Can you see any way of avoiding either higher subsidies at that point to make the premiums affordable or price controls? And can you see either of those getting through Congress?
No, and that's why I wonder whether he does that unilaterally too. And if we keep getting unilaterally closer and closer to a single-payer system, but you've hit the nail on the head. Young people aren't buying this now. We're trying to force them by penalizing them, but even the penalty's not enough. But if young people don't buy it, the price in a year, it's going to be even higher for the young, healthy people, and it will essentially be a high-risk pool, which is very expensive to cover, and then the prices go higher and higher and higher, and the only fix become more mandates. But that's why it's important. Some people have said the discussion over Obamacare isn't about health care. It's about freedom of choice versus coercion. The president is coercing you into 4 plans, and he's telling you exactly what you have to buy. This is extraordinary in our country, and that's why the whole Supreme Court case was something that was incredibly important, and I'm still incredibly disappointed at the outcome.
Senator, we asked some people to tweet in questions to you. One of them from Mock Tink writes this: do you think that the two sides can get a budget done, or are we doomed to a continuing resolution for the rest of President Obama's term in office?
Doomed.
Period.
Well, the reason is that, for example, the budget in the House doesn't raise taxes. The Republican budget doesn't raise taxes. The Senate budget raises taxes $1 trillion. Splitting the middle of this isn't acceptable, to us, because we think raising taxes again is bad for the economy. So I don't think we're going to vote for a $500 billion tax increase. In fact, I don't think Republicans are going to vote for a tax increase. So continuing resolutions go on. But here's where some of the blame lies. If you did individual appropriation bills, you wouldn't have a continuing resolution. Harry Reid could pass individual appropriations bills, but he hasn't done it. There are 12 different appropriations bills. If you did that, there'd be no enormous continuing resolution.
So this current budget conference committee back and forth and hearing that it's possible, you just don't buy it?
I'm not saying we shouldn't talk, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be negotiation. We shouldn't try. But if I had to predict January 15th, there'll be another continuing resolution. It's a really bad way to run your government. 2,000-page bill will come out. Nobody has time to read it, and it'll be plopped on the desk. The last one, we had one bill, and all senators were allowed to read one bill. So all of our staff were in there looking over his shoulders trying to read a 2,000-page bill, and that's why stuff gets stuck in the dead of night. That goes, how did that get in there? Oh, surprise, surprise. That was in the bill. I didn't know that.